let's assume that you decide to start a business through a corporate form. We've gone through some of that stuff already. Can anybody remember why you might choose to start your business through a corporate form? So if you don't set up a company to run your business, what do you run it as? If you are with somebody or a number of people, you can do it through a partnership, or you can choose to incorporate. Why you might want to go one way as opposed to the other depends on your intentions, the number of people involved, and what you are seeing for your business in the future. Take my example. I'm running a consultancy. I'm doing this, or I've been doing this for a long time as a sole trader. It means that if somebody wants me to do something, like design some asset, or do a video, or do a podcast, and they're willing to pay me for it, I don't really need to do anything complicated. We sign a contract. I sign the contract as myself. They sign a contract as their business. For example, one of the publishers wants me to make a video for them. So the contract will say Pearson on one end and Yanis on the other end. We sign this contract. I will produce like a 5-minute video for you guys presenting a topic, and then they can put it on their website. And they're going to pay me, say, £100 for it. It's fine. I don't need permission from anybody to do this. Don't worry about restrictions in employment, whether my employer allows me to do this or not, or whether I'm committed with somebody else in some sort of exclusivity agreement. Employment law issues aside, or any contractual restrictions aside, there's nothing to stop me or you for doing this. Somebody could pay you to put some Instagram posts talking about their business, right? You can have a sponsorship agreement. This happens very easily. If you have like a sizable Instagram account, a business might approach you and say, look, you've been going to the shops talking about the various bags or the various clothes that people could buy. How about you go into Harrods and you talk about our bag that people can purchase from Harrods. Then we'll do a deal and we'll provide a link to the Harrods shop and we'll pay you some money for this. This is a very established business. It happens all the time. You don't need to ask anybody for permission to do this in the sense that the authorities do not need to be involved. You can do this perfectly fine in your own name as a sole trader. When it comes to declaring that income for tax purposes, as I have told you in other occasions, if the income is fairly low and in the year you're not going to make much out of this, you don't even have to tell HMRC. HMRC does not want to know unless the amount of money exceeds £1,000 a year. So you don't even have any tax paperwork. If you do this well and you generate more than £1,000, then you need to register for self-assessment, in which you're going to put your own personal income from whatever you want, but also in the field, in the self-assessment that says, as a sole trader, I've done this, then you fill in that information and it's all a seamless process. If there's some tax to be paid, then it calculates it at the end. It's all done electronically. It's fairly easy. And then it gives you a link. You can go pay with your credit card. No problem at all. So the effect of thinking about your business or your business activity and having it done actually requires a minimum of paperwork here, and it can be done very easily. We've talked about partnerships in the past as well. If there's a group of you engaging together in this, you can just do it by yourselves. You don't need to have any paperwork either with the outside world or even between yourselves, because the law, as we've seen in the Partnership Act, recognizes partnerships as an existing thing. It's a matter of fact. So it's not dependent on you doing paperwork in advance. A partnership is there because you operate as a partnership. So your arrangement will be recognized by the law even though you haven't expressly discussed it with each other or you've made any paperwork to that effect. Now, of course, there are slightly different implications of partnership in terms of tax liabilities, but that comes a little bit later. At the initial level, whether you're working as a sole trader or you're working as a partnership, the money aspect and the tax aspect passes through your personal capacity through the normal stuff that you would do anyway. So it does not fundamentally change your paperwork arrangement if you're working as a barista down in Starbucks or if you're doing some of that work as a sole trader. No problem. Yeah. But you may want to incorporate, and then things become a little bit different. The reason why you might want to incorporate is that you want this formal separation between your personal paperwork and your personal finances and your business finances. We've discussed in the past about the concept of separate corporate personality and limited liability. From the moment that you incorporate, whoever is doing those contracts is no longer you. And because of the protections that come with limited liability, if this new entity that now runs your business gets into trouble, you will lose out because inevitably you will be a shareholder in your own business. So your initial investment as a shareholder will be lost if the business fails. But whoever is doing business with you is limited to this different entity and the money that this different entity has. So if you cannot deliver on something, or if something goes wrong and you have to fulfill or to meet some liability, this liability will only be met by the money of the business. As I gave you this example before, if I'm working as a consultant for somebody or I create some resource for somebody, if I've done it for myself and I used stock footage that I found on the web without getting license for this, and I create a video and I send it to somebody and then they get sued. Can you imagine this? You make a video for the university and one of the Adobe stock or one of the other databases goes, hang on a second, this is our footage there. Why is the university using our footage? Are they a client? No, they're not. It's like, whoa, they're gonna sue the uni and the uni is gonna sue me because most likely in the terms and conditions of the contract that we had, I took on the contractual obligation to ensure that whatever I give them, I've got the rights to. So if I included something in my video that I don't have rights to, and the university gets sued and I had done something for them, the university then is gonna sue me to try and recoup that loss. Is that normal? You're getting worried there because you're thinking my Instagram posts are full of other people's footage. You're not doing it for profit. You can still get in trouble. Now, before anybody freaks out, if you're posting stuff on social media, and they contain pictures that are not your own, that you found on the web, do not worry about it. The worst thing that can happen, because you're not doing it for profit, is that they will ask you to take it down. If it is music that you have incorporated into your video, not through the app, because when you put music through TikTok, through Instagram Reels, through YouTube Shorts, then they give you the rights to that music, and the way you know is that the app gave you the music to upload while you were uploading your content. But if you had just put an MP3 file that you own on a video that you made at home and then uploaded, then you're gonna get a copyright strike from the owner of that music. What's the worst thing that can happen? You will not be able to monetize that video because the copyright owner is gonna say, you're using my stuff, therefore if you make any money out of this, then the money comes to me, does not come to you. People get in trouble for this. Mr. Beast got in trouble for this. Did you know? Why? For an icon. So for about a fraction of a second, an icon appeared on his video like this. And they made a mistake. They didn't have rights to that icon. So the copyright holder made a complaint to YouTube, and YouTube said, you cannot monetize on that video. We're going to give all the money to the copyright holder because of this violation. And Mr. Beast, the ad revenue on the videos could run into the millions, right? So the people who had that little clip there were probably like, oh. But what's going to happen to you is that A, you cannot monetize if they say you've used copyright from somebody else, or if you've done it a couple of times, then they might take your channel down. But they won't come after you for money. If you are doing it for money, then it's different, then they might come after you for money. So what could happen for me is that if I'm doing this as a business and somebody paid me to produce a resource for them, and that the resource contains a copyright violation, then the copyright holder can sue me for damages. Well, actually, he's going to sue whoever published the video, and then they're going to sue me because in my contract, I had a provision that said I will make them good for any loss that they're suffering as a result of what I've done. And this is very common. If I signed it by myself, and now they paid me £100 for that video, but there's £1,000 liability arising from the costs of defending the copyright claim, then I'm going to have to pay for this out of my own pocket. If I'm doing it as a corporate, it's still going to be £1,000. But if my company has £200 in the bank account and it's got £1,000 liability, the company is just going to shut down. And they won't be able to come after me for the rest of the money. Now, this isn't good for me because having set up a company to run my business and then the company goes bust will have negative consequences on a number of things, but at least it won't take the money that I've got to pay rent. So one of the primary reasons why you may want to create this artificial separation and this firewall between what you are as an individual and what your business is, in terms of its finances, its bank accounts, its tax obligations, is to protect you from this stuff happening. So we're talking about the situation where you're thinking, what is the best way to organize your business? And you are not doing anything wrong, and you don't plan to do anything wrong. So forward-looking risk management is okay. And establishing a business, a company that has these kind of protections and firewalls is what it's all about. In the same way that when you buy travel insurance, you don't anticipate and you don't plan to be mugged when you're on holiday, so then you miss your flight or you have to get new passports and stuff. But you're getting the travel insurance just in case something unanticipated happens. Or you don't plan to be stuck in the tube and miss your plane, but you've got the insurance just in case it happens. So forward-looking risk management is fine. What is not fine is thinking, because I'm protected by limited liability, I will do nasty things. If I get away with it, good, I get the money. If I don't get away with it, what's the worst thing that can happen? This company only has £100. If that's how you run your business, then they will come after you for your personal money because of a series of additional violations. You know you're doing something wrong, and you're thinking, how can I fiddle with the paperwork so when they catch up with me, I suffer the minimum amount of loss? But of course, the law can see through these types of violations, right? So if I'm trying to set up my business through a company, I might be doing it because I want to have these separations and I want to have these mechanisms in place to allow me to look forward, take as much benefit as I can out of running the business, but also have some sort of stopover in case things go wrong. When I get to do this, I took the decision to do it, right? To set up a company and transfer my business to the company. What do I actually have to do? The first thing that you should think about is, how are you going to present yourself as a business to the outside world? Because now you're somebody new. So if you're setting up a business, you need to call it something. So step number one, and this is important for your marketing as well. Should you call it by your name? Choosing your own name might be a bad idea. First of all, your name might not be unique. So you might not be allowed to do this because there are a lot, this is there already. I cannot run my business with my name because my uncle he's a wine producer in Greece and they've got a very big winery. So the name is trademarked. So there would be no point in me having a company that's called Glinavos Consulting, because every time people Google it, they would go to my uncle's winery, right? It's not just about owning the domain name and what happens online. It's that technically, if you know that your name is already in use, then it's not going to work out. And you want the business to be a little bit distinct from your personality, because as the business grows, maybe you want to bring in more people. So if you attain partners or investors, maybe something that isn't just you as a person would make it easier for them to join. What happens if you sell it? I mean, for all the businesses that are name-based, you do have a problem when they decide to sell. So imagine Marc Jacobs, who Marc Jacobs by Marc Jacobs does Marc Jacobs. Have you noticed this? Have you ever looked at the label of a Marc Jacobs product that will say Marc Jacobs clothes by Marc Jacobs, made by Marc Jacobs? Like, this is kind of trademark gone mad, right? Anyhow, if he sells it and he's no longer Marc Jacobs, he's still Marc Jacobs himself, but he's no longer associated with the business that carries his name. That sounds like a bad idea. So you should pick something that is not in existence, so you have the choice to take it. You have to choose a name. Choosing your own name, not a top-notch idea. But can you choose whatever so long as it's not your name? No, because it needs to be available. I cannot choose to call myself Apple Computers because there's already one out there. Yeah. Not only I cannot choose something that is in existence, I cannot pretend to be affiliated with somebody. So I cannot call myself His Majesty's lecturer, right? Because that implies an association with the state authority. I cannot call myself official Apple or, Samsung subsidiary limited, because that implies an association with somebody else. Now, guys, think, this is not domain name, because you may be familiar with domain name registrations. Domain names is a free-for-all. So long as it's not registered already, you can claim it. I could register Westminster University.io, no problem, right? And then when they come and say, well, you're not Westminster University, and say, I'm not, but I'm willing to sell you the domain name, yeah? A lot of people make money out of this. They register a whole bunch of domain names that sound like a business, and then they don't actually do anything with it. If you do something with it, then they could come after you because you're pretending to be somebody else. So there are rules in the law about passing off or violating trademarks and things like this that they can come after you. But if you register a domain name and you don't do anything to it, and somebody comes and asks for it, you can sell it to them. So they will allow you to register it. They will not allow you to register a company name, the purpose of which is to deceive. Perhaps deceive is a strong word here, but to give the impression that you're doing something inappropriate. Now, what would you choose if, I don't know, give me some ideas. If I am a consultancy company, what I do is educational consultancy, privately audiovisual, right? What should I call my company? So it's not really my name, so people don't think they're buying wine. It's very nice, by the way. How did you pick your Twitter, Instagram handles? Did you just pick the suggestion that it gives you on the basis of your name? Is this a good company name? It's Candice, but it's a 5 at the end instead of the S because it sounds like, you know what? So the moment you have to explain it, it's over. Now, what's my social media handle? My social media is that wine because I'm not called Ioannis. Anybody who does this automatically fails. We sent this. Yes, because I'm Ioannis. So it's in officially, and my surname is Ginopoulos. So all my social media handles are Ginopoulos, like an iPhone but from Greece. So perhaps it's not the best one, but I came up with that stuff before I started marketing. If I was trying to say my handle is that, I would need to spend ages. This is what the university email address looks like, right? I would need to spend ages explaining this. So it makes it difficult to market if you cannot communicate the name. So you should choose something that is easy to say. People can hear what you're saying, and if you have to spell it, it's easy, or if they see it, they will remember. Of course, it does not imply something that you're not allowed to have. It does not imply association with an existing business. It does not imply association with a governmental authority or some official institution. It does not imply something of an international nature or a location nature that is not real to what you're doing. Then you need to obtain permissions. So the name that I chose for my company, why? Because it's unique. Because it's the starting of my surname and the starting of my partner's surname. So nobody else has this. Right? So if you Google it, you're not going to find anything other than me. So you've got something that's easy to say, relatively easy to say, easy to spell, and is unique. So then you can register domain names and stuff like that that are easy to communicate. There's some law behind this. So we don't think about these things in the abstract. So there are various regulations as to what the law allows you to have and why you should have it, how you can pick a company name, and remember that you can trade as something else. So the name of the company is Glintis Limited, but it trades as Glintis Consulting, right? Because I think it sounds fancy if you say consulting. The word consulting does not need to be in the company name. That's why a lot of businesses trade with their domain name. Even though Wonga.com was registered, do you remember that? It was a payday lender. But anyway, Wonga.com was registered as Wonga.com Limited, but they could have been registered as something else, and then they trade as the domain name, especially if they're an online business. So there are no problems in this slight difference, but of course, okay, if you're trading as Apple, but you're, H&M something limited, then there might be an issue because you're using the trading name in order to deceive again. What's the takeaway from this discussion? Choosing a company name is important in terms of marketing, but also in terms of law. You cannot do whatever you want. You cannot do whichever way you want it, but at the same time, it's not something to stress out over. You decide to do it. You decide it's a good idea to set up a company for the reasons that we've described. You have a fair idea of what your business is about and what you're trying to achieve. Remember that, unfortunately, setting up the company does not come with a pre-made business plan. So you need to know what your business is before you set up the company. It's normally not a great idea to set up the company and think what you're going to do subsequently. So you've got an idea of what the business is about, you've got an idea about your business plan, and you know that you're better served by having a private limited company as your starting point. There are other options, but we're not really talking about the different options because our focus is a profit-making enterprise. You could set up a community interest company, you can set up charities, you can do all sorts of things, but what we're thinking here is sort of entrepreneurship, right? How are you actually going to do it now that you've got an idea of what you're doing and you select the name? It is so easy these days. This is not sponsored by anybody, but I'm going to tell you the name. I did this by using Tide. The normal way, there's not a normal way, but the traditional way in which you would set up your business would be to go to Companies House and follow the process to start a business already in Companies House. This happens these days through the gov.uk website. So the government gateway is a website that allows access to all the government services that you can think of. It's actually very nicely done. And most countries in the world now are trying to do something similar where you got like an internet service point that represents government services that people can use for a variety of things. So you can go to the government website, you can navigate to the area that is controlled by Companies House, and there you have the option to set up a new company. This is a fairly streamlined process if you already have all your information. So you know who you are, right? You've got your name, you've got your address, you've got identification, because you need to be able to identify yourselves through passport information. It becomes a little bit more complicated if you're not British, and it becomes a lot more complicated if you're not domiciled in the UK. If you are in the UK and you have a British passport, most of the verification checks are super easy. Otherwise, you have to go through some additional steps. You go through the verification steps, you tell them which name you've chosen for your company. It does a real-time check whether this is available or not. And then you go through some a few additional streams. You pay the fee. You go to, you're already, because I Googled Company's House, right? So it took me there directly. So we're all here at Company's House. You go to the thing that says set up a company and check. You've got all these things here. Check whether you want to do it. It gives you some basic information to just be sure that this is what you want to do. You choose the name. You give the information of who are going to be the directors, and if you have a company secretary, which is not necessary for a private limited company. You also decide who are the shareholders or the guarantors. That's why I said you need your identification information, because if you're the director, you need to identify yourselves, be checked through, and to have address information. You need to have address information for your company as well, right? Because the company needs a physical location as its business address. And a few additional steps. Now, what is the cost? 10 quid. We're not talking a great deal of money here, right? Web Incorporation actually 12. But you need to have this information first, and you do it. Now, what about the Articles of Association? We've talked about this previously. You need the constitutional documents of the company. You can just incorporate the model Articles of Association that are relevant to your type of business. Done. Now, why did I do it with Tide? And, I'm not trying to promote Tide here. You can have other online banks that offer you the same. If you do it with one of these facilitators, they will take care of the whole process as well as open your business bank account straight away. What is important about this is that if you don't have a business bank account, then you cannot operate. So if you go through the business of incorporation through the Company House website, then the next day or in a couple of days, you're going to have your certificate of incorporation after they do the main checks and so on. It happens very quickly, right? But then you're going to have to take your certificate of incorporation and try to open a business bank account. It's not a big deal, okay? But you're going to have to select the bank that you want to go and then upload this information, and then the bank will have to check that this is okay before they open your business bank account. Yeah. Of course, your account will be operated by you. In this scenario here, this is a one-member company. So you register your company, you become the company director, and you're also the sole shareholder. How much money did you pay to purchase your shares? Usually you set it as £1, because there's no minimum capital requirements for private limited companies that set it at a higher level. So it's perfectly possible that the capital of the company is £1, this is one share, you're the 100% shareholder, you're also the director of the company. From this point onwards, everything that you do on behalf of the company, you do in your capacity as a company director. Therefore, you cannot operate the amounts of the company through your personal bank account. You cannot. You need a bank account. Now, what has happened recently is that you've got all these online banks that provide business banking that actually facilitate that process. And it is so easy. It blew my mind because I've been making these presentations for years, going down the traditional route. We started with paperwork, then we moved online. The costs kept dropping, right? Even we reached the point that now we're just at £12. It used to be 100. So it's becoming easier through the official route, but it sort of disaggregates the stages. If you go through one of the modern banks like Tide, I started off by selecting a bank account. I said, I would like to open a business bank account. It says, do you have a company registered? I said, no. So would you like a company registered? I go, It says, what would you like the name of your company to be? I say, Glintes Limited. It checks, immediately says, this is available if you want it. Then, do you have a business address to register this company as? I say, no. It says, would you like a PO box, a virtual address? What happens here is that the company needs to have an address. It is probably not a great idea to register the company address in your house. Perhaps you do not have permission. I'm renting my accommodation. My lease agreement says I'm not allowed to register a company at this address. So this was not an option for me. If I owned the house, I can do whatever I want. Again, not a great idea because this is publicly available information. So you probably don't want some kind of pissed off creditor turning up at your home in the middle of the night, right? So generally, it's not a great idea to register your company at your home address. For that reason, you could take what they call a virtual office. So the app asks, would you like a virtual office? I go, yep, virtual. So now my company is registered at the central, close to St. Paul's, like a central London address, which sounds really fancy. Yeah. Now, of course, now we hit some charges, right? They said, because you're opening a bank account with us, we will cover the costs of the registration of the business. So you don't have to pay the £12 to Company House. This is a gift. But you have to pay for the virtual office. What you do in that case, you say, I have a promo code, which you got by Googling promo code for Tide Bank. So I got a promo code that brought it's an annual fee of £120 or so, or 115. The promo code was worth £75 or £85, took that off the price, so it dropped down this initial cost of like 30 something. So we have the name, the bank account, the virtual office. It asked me for some additional information as to where to send the bank card, where it's setting everything up. The virtual office collects all physical post, scans it, and emails it to me. Isn't that great? Yeah. So I don't even have to worry about that stuff. And then it asked me, have you registered a domain name for your business? Now, I didn't do that step because I hadn't thought about this and I wanted to pick more carefully domain name, so I did that separately. But I could have clicked that. It recommended a series of different domain names. It even gave you like a discount on the price for registering. You would not pay for the domain name registration, but you would pay for having the website or something like this out. So they would even give you the domain name free. At least for the first year. That's how it works. So, guys, at pretty much zero cost, I paid for the virtual office, like £30 after all the discounts? At pretty much zero initial cost, I could have had the bank account, the business bank card, the company registration, the virtual office that takes care of everything, and the domain name, and all of that took 15 minutes. The moment I finished everything and clicked OK, I started receiving the emails. Here's the email from Company's House with your registration certificate. Done immediately, which means that from the moment I have this, I can start trading, meaning that within the same day that I set it up, I could have actually signed the contract as the company. The next day, I received in the post the new bank card. Then I started receiving scans because Company's House sent some paper documentation to the virtual office address. HMRC sent information about registering for corporation tax and all of that stuff. I received those emails as scanned. All of that done so easily and so effectively. Then you got an app, you can control the normal stuff for your traditional bank. So all of that these days is so easy. Compare this with what happens in other countries where you need, even though the registration process might be online, you have to wait forever to get the paperwork after you've submitted. And there is significant cost. If you wanted to set up a company in Greece, for instance, it would cost you thousands of pounds at the initial stages. And these are costs that they repeat every year. So here, there are some minimal costs in re-registering, keeping the registration alive every year. There is going to be like £100 cost for the virtual office and a little bit more for the website. But the running costs of the company here, all put together, everything is going to be less than £200 a year. In a European jurisdiction, it would cost you 4, 5, 10,000 euros a year just to keep the company alive, even with you having no turnover. So all my friends who are in Greece, they tell their clients, you only register a limited company if you already have significant activity so you can have tax deductible expenses. Otherwise, you're throwing 10 grand down the toilet annually just in keeping the company alive for no reason. That's why this country, for all its faults, continues to be one of the top places for doing business, because everything is seamless and the costs are very low. From the moment that you've registered your company at Companies House and you got your registration certificate, now everybody else can find out things about you. So you can go to the Companies House website, you can put the name of the company, and it will give you information about the articles of association, the nature of the company, some of the key financial information of the company, and the people involved, and addresses where you can communicate with everybody. Why is this essential? Because it seems quite intrusive. These days we're all very keen on privacy and all of that stuff, so we get worried about it. This is the counterbalance to limited liability. You cannot tell people on the one hand, do business with this nice company who's got £1, and then give them nothing. You need to give them some info. So we'll come back to and check this in a moment. But one of the questions involved here is, there were some limited expenses at the beginning, and I needed to pay these things in the process of setting up everything. So if I had done it through the Companies House, I would have paid them. Since I did it through Tide, I needed to pay Tide. So there was some money that changed hands. Obviously, that money came from me, from my personal account. Now, how do you work through this? This is a little tricky, because for the paperwork, once the company is set up, you need to account for company expenses that were in place before the company was around. And me, because I'm setting up a separate entity to run the business, I want all the business money to be business money and all my personal money to be personal money. So if I spend like £100 or something in setting this up, I would like that money back in my personal account. So the way this actually worked out, after the bank account was set up, I put on the paperwork this as a loan to the company. So I made a loan to the company before the company was even set up, in order to allow the setup process. Then the company repaid that loan back to me, sent it back to my personal account once the business account was set up. And it started having some, because obviously it didn't have any money when it was set up, it was just £1, but it needed to have some activity. Once the company attained some activity and had some money in the bank account, it paid back that loan. This is called the promoter's loan, because the person who sets up the company is called a promoter. You need an actual person to go through the steps of creating the company. It will not grow by itself. But the promoter is in this bizarre position that they're external to the company. You cannot contract with an entity that doesn't exist yet. But they would like to be compensated for their expenses, or perhaps paid by their services once the company is set up. The reason why this is problematic is because it contains a great opportunity for abuse when you are setting the company on behalf of other people, or when you are trying to extract some perhaps inappropriate benefit through the process of creation. Think about this. Me as a promoter, I'm setting everything up. I'm making an initial loan to the company so the company can pay for the promotion expenses. But what if within the promotion expenses, I include other things? It's not simply cost of the virtual office, cost of the domain name, or whatever it is. What if I also sell equipment to the company? So this company is being set up, and at the initial stages, it purchases the laptop that I was using to run this consultancy, the phone I was using. What if I put in the paperwork that the company purchased that laptop for £1,000 and that phone for £500? Since there's nobody else involved, who is there to say that this is an appropriate price? Am I, in a way, tweaking the system or if I've got other shareholders, scamming the other shareholders by extracting an inappropriate benefit out of these initial transactions. So that is a serious problem. If I had been hired by other people to promote this company, and then I built up these kind of phantom expenses that they repay me for, then effectively I'm scamming the company. On the other side, if I did these things at the beginning in order to set stuff up, and when the company is set up with other people as the board of directors and shareholders, and I say, can I now have my £100 back? And they kind of go, I don't know what you're talking about, because when you spend that £100, the company was not in existence, therefore it's not our problem. Then I am exposed to this loss. So we have a problem with this. And it has come up in the courts time and time again when the courts are trying to find the solution. There is no good solution, and the solution here cannot be contractual, because when you're promoting the company is not yet in existence, therefore you cannot contract with an entity that does not exist. If once the company comes into existence, it agrees to repay everything, it assumes that liability, then it's fine and you've got nothing to worry about. But equally, if you were trying to scam the company through expenses at the very beginning, and the company is not other people, then it's a very difficult thing to deal with. So the promoters are under a general duty, right, to do these things properly. But if there's nobody to complain on the other side, then you have difficulty enforcing that duty. So it is something that will come across. So remember the idea of the promoter and potential problems that can happen during the promotion of a company, both the promoter losing out or the promoter taking advantage of the company, because that is going to be a real issue. Now, in my case, what I was trying to do was not scam myself. What I was trying to do is to work out the way in which I can supply the initial capital that the company needs in order to be set up. And all this was, I tried to document it somehow, so it creates, by sending emails to the company account and things like this, to create a paper trail that then I can demonstrate to whoever asks for it what I was doing during the process of promotion. And then once the company started working and got some money in, it repaid that loan, and it created paperwork that says this is the repayment of the loan that we got for promotion. So I'm hoping that this is the best that one can do, since there is nobody else to make disclosure. Because most of the time, these things are disclosed. So the whole point about the promoter doing their job properly can be fixed by disclosure of whatever happened to a group of people that are independent from the promoter. This could be all the shareholders, or this could be the directors of the new business. But this assumes that there are different people holding these roles. If we're talking about a one-member company, that the promoter is the same person, the shareholder is the same person, the director is the same person, the employee is the same person, there's nobody else, then the best you can do is generate paperwork, so then you can demonstrate either to Companies House or to HMRC or to any potential investors in the future, what were you doing with the money at these very initial stages? And keeping the paperwork is important, because otherwise you can get in trouble. Not only in the sense that people might not trust you to have done these things properly, that they might actually accuse you of some sort of violation, trying to steal something or trying to hide something and so on. So this isn't, I'm not telling you this to make the process stressful. It's just that once you get to your head the idea that you're dealing with a separate entity, then you need to treat it as a separate entity. And in the same way that anything you do with a third party, you would need to document. If you order something, you would like a receipt. If you're doing something for your employer, you would like it written down. To nail down in writing the rights and obligations that might arise out of a relationship. This reduces the opportunity for misunderstandings and conflict in the future. It's only natural. So if you're running a single member company, you need to remember to do this, even though when you're sending an email to yourself, it does sound silly, but it does create a record that then you can use it to remind yourself what happened, but you can also demonstrate to people outside. Now, from the moment that you have set up the company, and you've received your registration certificate and your trading, it's called the trading certificate as well, from that point onwards, you are allowed to do business, then everything is fine. What happens if you made a mistake? It's possible to make a mistake. I made a mistake by choosing the wrong industry identification code. It's not a big deal. It doesn't have consequences. I just need to remember to fix it when I re-register for the second year. If you make a mistake about something fundamental, then you need to write to Companies House. Now, if you really messed things up properly, probably you would have gotten stuck somewhere in the process. Right? So if you were missing something, like your address is not in the UK or something like this, you would have hit a snag at some point that would request additional information. Equally, if you're opening a bank account at the same time, it does a credit check on you. So if you fail the credit check, then obviously you will get stuck. If you were using a facilitator to set up your company, it just wouldn't proceed. If you make a more serious mistake, but it's not noticed, or Companies House makes a mistake, then what is the right way to address this? The standard way to address problems of incorporation is not to undo the act of incorporation, because the act of incorporation creates a new person. So it's not really a great idea to undo the creation of a person, because from the moment that you've sent people the certificate, they might have started trading already, which creates rights and obligations in relation to third parties. So what's going to happen to these third parties if you tell them, well, the entity you were dealing with has been undone, therefore it never existed? So who do these people have a contract with then? What's going to happen with their money? So the correct way to undo problems at the incorporation level is to then shut down the company. So the Secretary of State takes that initiative. Something went wrong. We have to stop this. So we're shutting down this company, which means that the company existed for a short period of time, but then has been wound down. Undoing the act of incorporation is difficult, and it does not happen very often. One of the few examples we've got was the case R versus a Register of Companies, that they registered a pornographic business. And then they realized this was a kind of moral issue and they shouldn't have done this. So it's one of the few examples where the businesses, the act of incorporation itself is undone, because they kind of missed the fact that the business was trying to do something that was considered illegal at the time. But most of the time, the problem with incorporation is undone, as we said, by winding down the company, which means that for the time that the company was in existence and operated, the rights and responsibilities towards other parties are not affected.